Hi, welcome to Street Priest Ministries. I'm your host, Brother Jay, as we're taking the Gospels back to the streets. Today's drive-through message is Cain and Abel. Turn in your Bibles to Genesis 3:15. Okay. This is a very important story in the Bible because it's regarding the first murder of the Bible, Cain and Abel. It takes place shortly after the fall of man, and his nature became debased, like Jeremiah 17:9 said, "Our heart is deceitful above all things, desperately depraved as all of us." Every single man and woman born has a depraved, deceitful heart. And this is exemplified in this story here of Cain and Abel. But before we get to Cain and Abel, we're going to go ahead and go to Genesis 3:15 to get a little backdrop for this story, which is very important. Okay, 3:15. And I will put enmity. Now this is after the fall. The woman had already been hoodwinked by Satan to disobey her husband, and God and her husband. Her husband told her, and God told her husband, not to eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So she was disobedient. And after that, after she ate and disobeyed, under the promise of Satan that they would be like gods, they fell from nature that was God-like with a little g down here. They fell from that nature and became dead and alienated from God, the source of life. Now imagine a golf cart that's plugged in and the battery charges, but unplug the golf cart and it'll run like normal for a while. But its energy source will begin to degenerate and eventually die. And that's us. Apart from God, we begin to die at that point. We was unplugged from the source of life, which is God, but because of disobedience. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. So along with this fall of nature came a serpent seed and a seed of the woman, a seed that adheres to God. Two different seeds at one. So now the battle begins. We have warfare. And I will put between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. That's the first prophecy right there of the coming Messiah, Christ, of battlefield earth and the warfare that was to take place between the serpent seed up until the seed, which is Christ himself. The Messiah was to come. Warfare, battlefield earth. Cain versus Abel. Abel representing the woman's seed, the righteous seed. Cain representing the serpent seed. And that's how it's been. Cain represents the world, the people of the world. Abel represents God's chosen out of the world, his righteous, that does what God, that's obedient to God, that do what he tells him to do. Cain represents the disobedient, the jealous, the envious, the greedy, for gain, the persecutor of the righteous, because this is all they got here. The murderers of the world. The murderers of the righteous of the world. This is the beginning of it right here. That's why this is so important. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head. Meaning ultimately, Christ is going to crush the serpent, which is Satan. He defeated him at the cross. But also at the cross, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Death. He had to die for us so that we can have access to God the Father again. So his heel was bruised. The sting of death. He had to taste. He had to go to hell for us. He was resurrected on the third day. And he's permanently branded with this body of a man. Because he came in the nature of a man. He's a God-man. Permanent, a new creation. Now, we go from there, and we can slide on over to Genesis 4:1. That was an important backdrop. I had to get that in. And Adam knew his wife. He had intercourse with his wife, her flower King James. And she conceived and bare Cain and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. She's thinking like I got a warrior. And again she bare his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of the sheep. But Cain was a tiller of the ground. Now their names are very important. Cain in Hebrew, Cain, or K-N, means spear or striking fast. So remember this, their names. Abel means vain or vanity. Cain and Abel is Abel. Abel in the Hebrew. So you got Cain, or Cain, for spear striking fast for Cain, and Abel means vanity. Now remember these names. They're very important. Names are very significant in the Bible. The names of people are very significant. Okay, so now let's read. And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And again she bare his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of the sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. He was a farmer. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And Abel he also brought of the firstling of his flock, and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and his offering. Now, these wasn't just no random offerings that they was giving. God had set up a designated place and a designated time for them to give their offerings. And the reason they was giving these offerings, because God said, because sin come death, and the life of the soul resides in the blood. So the only payment for sin was to die. And if you didn't have the price, which was perfection, that's the knowledge of good and evil, that's what Satan duped man, saying to have knowledge of good and evil, you can keep the law. The law came later with Moses. No, you can't. God's standard is so high we couldn't keep it. Just innocent faith accounts for righteousness with God. We cannot be God. So that was the error of the story in the Garden of Eden. We don't have that capacity to be God. His glory is like the earth from the sun. The simple childlike faith, God, innocent faith, he looks at it, it counts it for righteousness. To trust him. Adam and Eve didn't trust him. They disobeyed God and followed the devil and took all creation downhill ever since. Now, sin comes death. So God instituted animal sacrifice back then. You would confess your sins on this animal, kill the animal, let his blood run out, and that God used that as temporary payment for sin until Christ was to come to buy up all these animals. Sheep, rams, goats, all these sacrifices since the dawn of time. Christ was to come, the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. God had, just like we used to be on a gold, we used to be on a gold note and silver note currency, where if you had an argument, you could take your gold notes and cash them in and get real gold or real silver instead of this fiat debtor notes that we're given now, which isn't money at all. Debtor notes, which has enslaved us, the usury, the banksters. It's not about worth as much as toilet paper. It's money we have in our pocket. But anyway, Christ was worth enough to come and pay for all the sin. And this was very important that you get these offerings right. Now, Abel got his offering right. He did what God told him to do. And Abel, he also brought the first fruit, and this is another thing, first fruits, first things. When I teach you about first fruits, give my teaching a video on first fruits. God loveth giving and giving his way. First fruits, tithes, always the Lord. Alabaster box, the Lord. Which takes the place of giving a bullock in the Old Testament. Bullock sacrifice. To ascend for God's pleasure, for his joy. That's what burnt offering means. And Abel, he also brought of the firstling of the flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering. But unto Cain and to his offering, he had no respect. Cain brought something dead. He brought, and I'm sure what Cain brought was colorful. I'm sure it looked better than Abel's old dead sheep, quartered and cut up on the altar. I'm absolutely positive. But unto Cain and unto his offering he had no respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. And the Lord said unto Cain, why art thou wroth? What are you pissed off about? Why are you angry? And why is thy countenance fallen? If thou dost well, shall not thou be accepted? And if thou dost not well, sin lieth at the door. And the little one says, sin is like a lion crouching, waiting to pounce on you. If you're disobedient, you're rebellious, in doing what God told you to do. And unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. Sin will rule over you. It will dominate you. And Cain talked with Abel, his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and slew him and killed him. Now, put a pause right there. I'm going to go to, let's see where I have my book. This book right here. Jasher. The book of Jasher. The word Jasher means straight. Book of the straight is not the name of a person. It's the straight book, literally. That's what Jasher means. So we're going to go to Jasher. Now Jasher is in the Bible and referenced throughout the Bible. It was one of the books that was originally in the King James that was taken out. Get my teaching, the book of Enoch, I teach on the books. I start out, as I teach in the book of Enoch, I taught all through the book of Enoch, Brother Jay reads. But I taught how the Bible was put together before I even started reading Enoch. And books that were in the Bible was taken out. This is one of them. So you get that teaching. You want to know more about that, the history of the King James. Now this book, imagine the Bible being a puzzle, a big giant puzzle with many pieces. Now, as you took books out that was in the Bible, they filled in details that we just read King James. They just pretty much, it's just painted with a broad brush. It didn't give much details on Cain and Abel. But this book does. And it's pretty thorough. And you're going to read here, it's going to fill in the missing gaps. Now, I always had a question, because I'm like that. I'm saying, well, Cain, like I said, he was a farmer. So he gave of the earth. Now, I did think, well, why didn't he ask his, barter or something and ask his brother for a sheep for the offering? Because that's what God requires, something living. With blood, the life of the blood resides in the soul. And so whatever that is, the blood's very important. So why didn't he just barter with his brother and get a sheep? But this fills it in what really went on. Gives you more detail, which you need, and then you don't feel sorry for Cain as much. Because Cain was a farmer. I mean, he gave his colorful, I'm sure that he had these bright, beautiful vegetables, and orange and yellow and red, bell peppers and carrots. You can imagine. You know all the color of vegetables. I'm sure he put together, imagine a fruit bowl. I could put a hell of a fruit bowl together. I mean, all the different colors you can do with fruit and vegetables. But that was dead. That wasn't what God required. Something dead. Now, we're going to read here. This is going to fill in the detail. And the Lord drove them out the day from the Garden of Eden to till the ground which they were taken, and they dwelt at the east of the Garden of Eden. And Adam knew his wife, and she bore 2 sons and 3 daughters. Now that's for you people that always ask, well, who did Cain and Abel marry? Well, the book of Jasher tells you. They had 3 daughters. They married one of the daughters. Now you can get away with that back then because the gene pool was strong. Back then it would allow you to do that. But God forbade it later because the gene pool started to degenerate. And then if you sister and brother were to marry, or even first cousins, you get kids that are genetically defective. You're going to produce kids that have various types of disabilities, mental illness and everything else, deformities. And that's why God forbade it. But in the beginning, the gene pool was a lot stronger and you can get away with that. So they married their sisters. That's how they got their families, the brothers. Abraham married his half-sister, Sarah. And she called the name of the firstborn Cain, saying, I have obtained a man from the Lord. And the name of the other she called Abel. For she said, in vanity we came into the earth, and in vanity we shall be taken from it. The vanity was, she was lusting for power, to be like God. That's the vanity. She named her kid Vanity. That's what Abel means, vanity. Mankind became fallen because of vanity. That's why God is so hard on pride. The Bible said God resisteth the proud to give a grace to the humble. He's hard on vanity. Vanity is what got us in this mess. You want to step outside your box, push God off his throne and be God yourself. Jump up on the throne. And the boys grew up, and their father gave them a possession in the land. And Cain was a tiller of the ground, and Abel a keeper of sheep. So one was a farmer, and one was a shepherd. How many times we read about shepherds in the Bible? It's the first shepherd right here that was killed. A whole line of shepherds. in the Bible. I done taught on that. Good to teach. Get the Good Shepherd. Start there. Video of the Good Shepherd. And it was at the expiration of a few years that they grew an approximate offering to the Lord. See, there has a designated time to give this offering. And these men were priests of their house. They were high priests of their families and house. God always looks at the man of the house as the priest of his family. And they were to give offerings for their wives, their kids. They were the priests. God had a designated place to give these offerings. And they was to take the offerings also for the sins of their family. To offer up sacrifice for their family as well. And it was at the expiration of a few years that they brought an approximate offering to the Lord. And Cain brought from the fruit of the ground, and Abel brought from the firstling of his flock, first fruit. From the firstling of his flock, from the fat thereof. I love the fat of steak. It's where all the seasoning and everything, and the smoke, everything gets into the fat. The best. Abel gave God the best. The first and the richest. Firstling of his flock from the fat thereof. And God turned and inclined to Abel and his offering, and fire came down from the Lord from the heaven and consumed it. Something else Genesis didn't point out. Now you've seen fire come down from heaven on offerings plenty of time in the Bible. I mean, Elijah's a good example of that. Elijah pretty much put his offering in the center of a pond, a man-made pond he made to make it very difficult for God as he took on the false prophets of his day, 850 on Mount Carmel. And fire fell from heaven and consumed Elijah's offering. After that, he killed the 850 prophets of Jezebel. Just taught on Jezebel. Get to teaching Jew. And I taught on Jezebel too. You can get that video. Jew who was the killer of Jezebel. God's killer. And it was an expiration of a few years that they brought an approximating offering to the Lord. And Cain brought from the fruit of the ground, and Abel brought from the firstling of his flock, from the fat thereof. And God turned and inclined to Abel his offering, and a fire came down from the Lord from heaven and consumed it. And unto Cain and his offering the Lord did not turn. So all his dead fruit was sitting up on the altar, and God didn't even give it a second look. And he did not incline to it, for he had brought from the inferior fruit of the ground before the Lord. And Cain was jealous against his brother Abel. Jealousy and envy. That's usually the precedent to murder. And Cain was jealous against his brother Abel on account of this, and he sought a pretext to slay him, see? Like I said, it was the precedent. He was looking for an excuse to kill him now. From this point on, and the Bible said, envy is the Proverbs. Envy and jealousy is the rottenness to the bones. The Bible said, wrath is cruel and anger is outrageous, but who could stand before envy? The first murder had to do with envy. And usually murder is centered around envy of some type, jealousy of some type. And in some time after, Cain and Abel, his brother, went out one day into the field to do their work. And they were both in the field. Now remember, he already had in his heart plotting. That's what murder is. Planning to kill somebody is murder. The Bible said when the word is used, thou shalt not kill, it has to do with murder. It had nothing to do with killing, self-defense, or war. It had to do with plotting and scheming and planning. Premeditated murder. He already had it premeditated. He's already just waiting for the occasion to kill. And in some time after, Cain and Abel, his brother, went one day into the field to do their work. And they were both in the field, Cain tilling and plowing his ground, and Abel feeding his flock. And the flock passed that part which Cain had plowed in the ground. And it sorely grieved Cain on this account. So he's trampling, his sheep are trampling on this fresh plowed earth. And Cain approached his brother Abel in anger, and he said unto him, What is this between me and thee, that thou comest to dwell and bring thy flock to feed in my land? And Abel answered his brother Cain and said unto him, What is there between me and thee? He said, Why are you beefing with me? What are you trying to start something with me for? That thou should eat the flesh of my flock and clothe thyself with the wool. He said, You stole my sheep and ate my sheep and wearing wool jackets and wool clothing. So what are you complaining about? Now, this is where you get the good, juicy detail to why God had no respect for Cain. Why didn't Cain take those sheep that he was stealing from his brother and give an offering to God with those sheep? Cain was greedy, looking out for himself. And then he offered God something inferior, and he taken the superior to himself, instead of setting aside an offering unto God. And he should have went to his brother and dealt with him righteously to give to God righteously. He could have bartered with his brother. His brother's sheep needed to eat whatever crops on his land. He could have bartered. And he could have gave a righteous offering. Because God usually likes sacrifice anyway. He don't want you stealing something and give it to him. He'd rather for you to pay for it and give it to him, or work for it and give it to him. Even David, to halt the plague that God put on Israel, when at the threshing floor, he wouldn't, I can't remember the guy's name, but David paid for the sacrifice to give to God. He said the man was going to give it to him for free. He said, No, you're the king. He said, No, I can't sacrifice nothing that I didn't sacrifice for to give to God. Follow that. So Cain represents the greedy world, looking out for themselves, and want to give something inferior to God. Give God a tip, something dead. Keep the best to themselves. And now therefore put off my wool of my sheep. So take my woolly clothes off you got on. Now therefore put off the wool of my sheep, with which thou hast clothed thyself, and recompense me for their fruit and flesh which thou hast eaten. He said, Pay me back what you owe me, and take off them clothes and give them back. And when thou shalt have done this, I will then go from thy land as thou hast said. He said, when you pay me back, I'll leave. Believe me, I've dealt with a lot of Cains in my life. Judases and Cains. And Cain said unto his brother Abel, Surely, if I slay thee this day, there's one way to wipe your debt out. That's how the world thinks. I'll kill off my creditor. That way I don't owe anything. Cain was the first to do this. Told you he's the embodiment of this world. Kill off the righteous and take their land. Frame them, take it, seize it. The greed. Cain represents the greed. And Cain said unto his brother Abel, Surely, if I slay thee this day, who will require thy blood from me? God doesn't see anything. God's asleep, he's saying. Nobody sees nothing. And Abel answered Cain, saying, Surely God, who has made us in the earth, Abel was aware of God in his presence, he will avenge my cause, and he will require my blood from thee, shouldest thou slay me. For the Lord is the judge and arbiter, and it is he who will requite man according to his evil, and the wicked man according to the wickedness that he may do upon earth. Said, God's the judge. You're not getting away with anything. And now if thou shouldest slay me, surely God knoweth thy secret views. God knows you were plotting and scheming all along to kill me. And will judge thee for the evil which thou didst declare to do unto me this day. Just for you speaking it, God's still going to judge you. And if you do it, he's still going to judge you. If you kill me, you're going to judge. And when Cain heard these words which Abel his brother had spoken, behold, the anger of Cain was kindled against his brother Abel for declaring this thing. Abel spoke wisely. It pissed Cain off. So now he's boiling hot. And Cain hastened and rose up and took the iron part of his plow. Took the iron part of his plow. I'm sure it was sharp, the plow of the earth, like a sickle light, with which he suddenly smote his brother. And he slew him. And Cain spilt the blood of his brother Abel upon the earth. And the blood of Abel streamed upon the earth before the flock. And after this Cain repented, having slain his brother, and he was sadly grieved, and he wept over him, and it vexed him exceedingly. But now he's sad. And Cain rose up and dug a hole in the field. What's a murder without covering up the murder? Now he's trying to cover the murder up. He got over his grief quickly. Now the scheming continues. And Cain rose up and dug a hole in the field. This is the first murder right here. Cover up of the murder. Wherein he put his brother's body, and he turned the dust over it. And the Lord knew that Cain had done this to his brother. It's the first grave right here. First killing, first murder, it's like the first everything. And the Lord knew that Cain had done this to his brother. And the Lord appeared to Cain and said unto him, Where is Abel thy brother that is with thee? He said, Where your brother at? And Cain disassembled and said, I do not know.